Welcome back. Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment Minister Barbara Creecy today delivered the department's budget for the 2021-2022 financial year to the National Assembly. Among other issues, it highlighted the need to protect natural resources while growing a post-COVID-19 economy. Key to the recovery is a green stimulus recovery program, which forms part of the post-COVID-19 economic reconstruction and recovery program for South Africa. It will contribute to equitable economic growth, provide employment to marginalised communities and grow economic sectors reliant on the environment without destroying it. The Minister joins us now to expand more on this. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, Minister. So first, let's talk about what steps have been taken to ensure that the country contributes its fair share to the global climate change effort as per the newly established Presidential Climate Change Coordinating Commission. I know we spoke about this, I think, several weeks ago, but what are the final decisions?
Good evening and greetings to your listeners. Well, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, we have put out for public comment South Africa's nationally determined contribution, which is our contribution to mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. We are still collating the responses from the public, but the draft NDC reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 28% by 2030. Government has committed to pulling on stream 26 gigawatts of renewables. And this will reduce the footprint in electricity generation of fossil fuels from 80% to 51%.
And that enhanced NDC, how will it significantly boost both mitigation and adaptation ambition?
Well, South Africa has what we call a full NDC. So in addition to talking about how we plan to mitigate greenhouse gases, we also talk about our adaptation moves. Obviously, what you would understand is across the globe, all countries are having to deal with the reality of climate change, and South Africa is no different. We are facing droughts, extreme weather events, rising sea levels. So all of our cities and our provinces have developed climate adaptation strategies. These are being mainstreamed into the IDPs at municipal level and into provincial budgets so that we start to deal with drainage, water security, the built environment, all the things that are going to be severely impacted on by climate change as temperatures rise and extreme weather events become more common.
So this is something that we also spoke about, but I want to get an update on that, the long-awaited climate bill. So it's been certified now by the state law advisor, but have you resolved some of the contentions on the reviewed policies, legislations and practices, especially in relation to the management, breeding, hunting and trading and handling of several of the core species?
Okay, so the climate bill is one thing. The report of the high-level panel is a separate thing. The climate bill is in the cabinet system at the moment, and it will go to the National Assembly later this year. With regard to the high-level panel, the report was released 2 weeks ago. We have a series of engagements with key stakeholders that will be impacted on by the panel's recommendations coming up in the coming week. We are already drafting a draft policy position that is being discussed with our provincial departments, and in due course we will be developing a white paper, which is a full-blown policy paper on biodiversity and sustainable use.
So that's still going through the consultation process?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get back to the climate bill in just a moment, and apologies for conflating that, but I want to also talk about the implementation of the National Waste Management Strategy for 2020. What are the salient points of this?
I think that is a major priority for this year. I think that we all agree that large parts of our country are really filthy. And I think that we are deeply concerned that citizens chuck waste out of their car, they dump household waste, they throw fast food packets into the environment. So obviously the first thing that has to change is citizen behavior, and we work on an ongoing basis around this. We have recruited 12,000 unemployed youth to help us with hotspots in municipalities across the country where there is illegal dumping, to help clean up that in partnership with national and provincial government. Plastic waste is a major area of focus. We've introduced new regulations to increase the recyclate content in plastic bags. We've also developed this expanded producer responsibility schemes where the packaging industry is one of the waste streams that we're targeting. And obviously the intention of these extended producer responsibility schemes is to enable producers to take responsibility for downstream waste in their areas of production and importation. And we are looking forward to this supporting the process of diversion of waste from landfills and obviously stimulating industries in the recycling area.
So for those who don't know, just also remind us of the new requirements for plastic carrier bags as were published last month, and also the importance of marine litter remains. I know you said that's also another major concern.
Yes, absolutely. Well, plastic bags from 2023, they'll have to have 50% recyclate content, and by 2027, 100% recyclate content. And this is obviously very important because it reduces the amount of new plastic in the environment and also creates a demand for recycled plastic, which obviously encourages people to be collecting this and diverting it from landfills and from the environment. We have a program called Source to Sea. We've piloted this program in 5 major rivers in the eThekwini area, and we're now going to be expanding it to 16 coastal districts and employing 1,600 young people, giving them work opportunities. Really what this program is all about is capturing litter before it enters the sea. And obviously that's a very important activity because we're all concerned about the impact plastic is having on our fish stocks and on our marine mammals, and of course ultimately destroying the ecosystems in the oceans.
So speaking of the fish stocks, so you are also embarking on stabilizing the fishing sector through the allocation of longer-term fishing rights. This has always been a critical issue that has also been dogged with a lot of controversies depending from where you stand. Are you able to attract investment to the industry at this point?
Well, I think because there are 12 sectors that have to be reallocated, we do need to make sure that that process is concluded by the end of this calendar year. Clearly, I know that many in the industry want to recapitalize fishing fleets, and clearly they want to know before they make that investment whether or not they will have rights for the next 15 years. We're hoping that we can deliver a process that is clean, transparent, accountable, transformative, and also legally defensible. We know that previous rights allocation processes have been bogged down in controversies in court for many years. I'm still dealing with some of the matters that arise from the 15-16 allocation process. We are bringing on board service providers to assist us, and we're trying to do everything in our power to make sure that we don't have that kind of situation arising from the 2021 process.
Okay. So, Minister, let's go back to the climate bill. I did mention in our introduction that there is going to be an effort at economic reconstruction. So how do the two combine, especially given the period from which we're from, COVID-19 playing havoc not only on our industries, but we've seen climate change, especially in our agricultural sector. So how are you going to use both strategies to complement each other?
Well, I think across the globe, what we are seeing is that more and more countries are including green technology and green economic initiatives in their recovery programs. So the introduction of different forms of technology that promote carbon neutrality would be an area of economic growth. It's also an area of job creation. I mentioned in my introduction that we plan as government to introduce 26 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. And we know that renewable energy has potential to create enormous jobs. It has a potential to attract investment. And of course, it also helps us achieve our longer term goal of a carbon neutral economy and a climate resilient society. The waste sector, which I mentioned earlier, is also a very important sector for green economy initiatives. I think that there's a concept of what we call the circular economy. And what that concept says is that it's no longer sustainable to have a take, make, and throw away approach to production, distribution, and consumption. And that we have, because of resource constraints, to be looking at how, as we produce one product, we are also designing that product to have several more lives so that we can be more efficient in our resource use and so that we can minimize the impact of waste on our environment and on our ecosystems.
So we had spoken about the just transition and what would be at the center of that, but there's also the concern of what should be a reasonable pace. To your mind and through the consultations that you're having, what are you getting a sense of what that will be?
Look, I think that obviously there are sectors in our society who would like to see the transition to a low carbon economy happening much faster. I think the issue that we have to think about is, firstly, do we have access to the technology? Do we have access to the finances and investment that will be involved? But most importantly, how do we manage that change process so that those who are already disadvantaged in our society are not the ones who pay the price of the transition? I think that we had a lot of conversations when we were developing the economic reconstruction and recovery program in Cabinet as to how this program overall can assist us to deal with abiding constraints of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. And I think that there are similar concerns within the climate space. So one would say that green technology presents opportunities, which it does. It presents opportunities for job creation and investment. But what we have to make sure is that those opportunities benefit those who are in conditions of poverty and unemployment in our country, and that the transition to a climate resilient economy and society helps us with some of the central abiding constraints and inequalities that we face in our society.
Minister, thank you so much for your time. Forestry, Fisheries and Environment Minister Barbara Creecy.